saw some people talking about how your logical framework of utilitarianism and moral anti-realism are incompatible. Thoughts on that? Oh my god. Rem really needs to go and, like, finish his degree or something. Holy f***. No, moral anti-realism and utilitarianism are not incompatible. Holy shit. Anyone who would say that has so little understanding of what? It's so incredible. Absolutely not. That's normative and meta-ethics, like, broader, like, belief system on, like, meta-ethical statements and the practical way that you apply them in normative systems. Yeah, just... Oh, God. Isn't Rem just obnoxious? I can't speak to a lot of the broader stuff, but Rem was shockingly ignorant when it came to his misunderstandings about moral anti-realism, so it could just be that he's really triggered by me, so he forgets his training or whatever. Yeah, the funny thing is that, like, Rem can talk whatever shit he wants, but after the argument that I had with Rem, I got dozens of emails from philosophy graduate students. Some of them PhDs, one of them a professor, affirming and lightly critiquing some of my positions. The one criticism I heard more often than any other was that, yeah, Rem's positions here, his arguments, aren't really valid. Like, his characterization of moral anti-realism as meta-ethical nihilism is just not valid. You can Google it. It's the first thing that comes up. Moral naturalism? I want to make it extremely clear, by the way, I'm not in any way an expert on philosophy. Not even remotely. I do not pretend to have some superseding knowledge of this. I just know moral anti-realism is a thing. You can read on it. And then you get, yeah, into non-objectivism, non-cognitivism, moral error theorist. I have so many emails in my inbox that I don't understand. Because they use terms like this. I try my best to learn these, but hey, philosophy is pretty complicated. Is there a version with pretty pictures? Okay. The general understanding that I have is that moral realism is the belief that what is morally good can be objectively determined. That it's possible in some way to find moral truths in the world. That not just like what people tend to like, but that you can actually find what they are. And that those truths would exist if humanity all disappeared, if the universe was controlled by different aliens or what, like, they're like a fundamental set of principles, you know? That's moral realism. And obviously, because we're talking about philosophy, there are a million branches of that. A million billion branches of that, okay? So that is not, by no means is, like, every moral realist position as simple as that, but that's the gist of it, you know? Yeah, I'm not saying they're knowable, but I'm saying that they think they exist, okay? Whereas a moral anti-realist is of the opinion that there's no such thing as an epistemically objective morality. Now, that doesn't mean a moral anti-realist doesn't believe things can or cannot be objectively right or wrong, but they're objectively right or wrong in the framework of an intersubjective set of moral principles. Does that make sense? So this is my position, that it's intersubjective. So my position is that there's no way to objectively determine, like in a universal sense, what is right or wrong. But if you arbitrarily decide on several axiomatic principles, like, for example, we should promote human well-being or species well-being, whatever, truth and knowledge are good, we should be considerate, like stuff like that, like stuff we choose. I think when we choose to value those things, we're being subjective. It's just what we feel is right. I don't think those are objective determinations. I think we're choosing to bias ourselves towards those beliefs. But then, after choosing those biased beliefs, you can then determine things which are objectively wrong and objectively right. So once you've chosen your first principles, your axioms, then you can make strong statements about what's right or wrong after. Now, me saying that got interpreted as moral nihilism, which is the belief that there's no such thing as right or wrong at all, which is idiotic, because I make moral statements on my stream every minute of every hour that I'm live. If I was a moral nihilist, I would not be talking about what I think is right or wrong. So, and that's why there's this narrative to paint me as someone who doesn't think that, like, um, there's no such thing as right or wrong, only power or whatever. There are other positions I have, like epistemic anti-realism, that got conflated as a disbelief in truth. Let me see if I can run this by you guys, okay? So, generally speaking, the incredibly broad and poorly defined postmodernist branch of philosophy and sociology and political science and everything else, it sort of revolves around the idea that there's no such thing as a singular truth that describes the human experience. That truth is fragmented, that there's no one way to sum up the totality of experience. You have to understand things through different frameworks. Does that make sense? So, Marx is a modernist because he believes you can describe the human experience through dialectic materialism. But postmodernists, like Foucault, disagree with that because they believe that while that may be a useful tool in some instances, it doesn't even touch on the plurality of truths that humans describe, you know? An element of postmodernist analysis in a ton of academic fields. And again, I'm not qualified to make really, really, really strong statements on this stuff. But as I understand it, I don't know if there is such a thing as an objective truth. Like, chat, say something which is objectively true. I'm going to single one of you out, so be ready to respond back when I call you out, okay? I'm trying to look for the most objective statement that I can. Something that doesn't involve categories. Fine, the sun is hot. Spicy lemon, we're going with you. The sun is hot. That's what you said. You've said the sun is hot. And I agree with you, by the way. I would go so far as to say I think that's objectively true, okay? So, the sun is hot. How is that an objectively true statement? I'll wait for the response. This needs to be a back and forth. Can we measure the temperature? Take away categories. Hot is a relative term. How about another one? The sun is hotter than Earth. Objectively true? As far as we're concerned, yes, but how do you know that? I'm going to run past all of these roads that we can run down and end at the baseline, which is you say things are objectively true because they conform to our empirical analysis of reality. Now, here's the fundamental question. Why does what is true have to be something which conforms to empirical reality? In a fundamental sense, does truth mean the same thing as empirically verifiable? Not really. We talk about truth in a lot of ways, and many of the things we say are true don't conform to empirically verifiable standards. Are you getting into the occult? No, the point that I'm making is that when we talk about something being metaphysically true, I mean true in the truest sense, we often defer to an understanding of empirically verifiable things, okay? But do you think it's possible that a culture could exist where to them, truth is oral history? Truth is just the stories that are relayed from birth till death, from one family member to another, forever. And that everything else around them, all the empirical stuff around them, everything beyond that, is just a cacophony of natural phenomena surrounding the fundamental truth that is the oral history they pass forward. Because the thing is, truth is linguistically variable, but it's also conceptually variable. Oral history can contradict, though, and we're abandoning the empirical model. The point that I'm trying to get at here is that if you run it down, even our belief that truth and empiricism correspond is a choice that we make. And that's my belief. We have made the very, very, very smart decision to correspond our understanding of what is true with what is empirically verifiable. I like that because it's how we do basically everything. But I don't necessarily know if that understanding of truth is objectively aligned with the frameworks that we've set it to. They talk about this in 1984, about the truth of the party, and I'll bite the bullet on this. I don't think that our understanding of truth today is any more objectively valid than the truth that whatever Big Brother says happened, happened. Now, of course, in my case, I have empirical reality to fall on, and in their case, they only have dogma from an authoritarian. I don't think there's an objective way of verifying the preferentiality of either of those truth systems. The only thing I think you could really do in such a system is to kill the people who disagree with you. I mean, if you found people whose life decisions were motivated by a truth which is so dissonant to the one that we live in that they no longer believe in empirical reality, I mean, they could do functionally anything that would conform to their understanding of truth, right? Does that make sense? Or to put it another way, understandings of truth that don't conform to empiricism are very dangerous. So religion? No, I'm not talking about religion here, okay? The funny thing is, I actually got into this argument because of Destiny, so it's funny I get canceled by his community for this. Do you remember? Some of you may remember. Destiny said that he didn't think it would be immoral to gun down the North Sentinelese indigenous people because they were so incapable of understanding our social contract that they would no longer be able to be respected by it from our perspective. Essentially, their understanding of the world was so incompatible with our own that their slaughter is something you could morally justify. It's funny because that's actually a more extreme and less coherent version of the position that I'm defending, because I'd be willing to bet the North Sentinelese still understand empiricism. You get me? You understand where I'm coming from? So it's funny that I get canceled from that direction, but are we talking about postmodern neo-Marxism? Maybe I'm describing this really, really poorly. Let me think if I can try to describe this in another way, okay? I think there are significant utilitarian benefits to our understanding of truth. It's the one that I think is best because it most allows us to achieve the subjective axiomatic values that I want to achieve. Things like human happiness, which I have arbitrarily decided I value, are best achieved through an understanding of empiricism co-aligning with our understanding of what is true, okay? But I don't think that's an objective universal thing. I think these are subjective preferences we've described because they work best for us. And I do think they work best for us, right? Now, if you have other groups, now imagine you have a group of people with a different set of axiomatic values. I want to be clear, by the way, this does not mean different politics. I actually believe that most neo-Nazis have the same fundamental axiomatic values as anyone else. That's why I call it an intersubjectively determinable thing, because humanity always seems to gravitate towards the same basic set of axiomatic beliefs. The problem is that they justify theirs very differently, which is why their ideology is riddled with so much incoherence and contradiction. But that's how they justify things. Or let me put it another way. When Nazis are defending themselves, what do they say? I like killing people because killing people is good? Or do they say, we need to do what we do because it will secure the future for a white race and white children? The latter argument right there is an argument in favor of axiomatic values that I hold. It's just predicated on a different set of empirical understandings of the world. So same base values filtered through a fucked up understanding of how the world works. If the Nazis' conspiracy theories were true, the Jewish question, racial differences, and all that, then their actions would be more justified, which is why they justify their actions in that way. They don't justify the stuff that they do by deferring to a different set of fundamental axiomatic values. They do it by justifying the values we all share through a different normative framework. Does that make sense? Please tell me. I'm going to feel really bad if I'm doing a bad job explaining this because I'm at the literal apex of my ability to understand and describe these issues. Yeah, the axioms are comparable. The premises and the world facts that they set forth afterwards, that is different. That changes. Which is why I think you can change the mind of a Nazi. There are people in my community who used to be Nazis who aren't now. And guys, to those of you who are formerly alt-right, back when you were alt-right, didn't you think what you believed was the best way to achieve a better world? I mean, you did, right? You didn't think you were evil. You thought X and Y because you thought anti-SJWs don't just hate life and happiness. They think that SJWs are some kind of threat to our political stability. Transphobes, well, there's a number of things. Anti-degeneracy, Western values, etc., but there's usually underlying axiomatic values that I can sympathize with there. Even if they're not identical to mine, they're usually pretty much the same. it's the facts that get laid on top that end up causing big problems, you know? So now that I've laid out all of that, I'm finally ready to explain the conversation that I had with Rem like a year and a half ago, the one that leads people on the right and Destiny fans to say that I don't believe anything is right or wrong, and I don't think there's truth, only power. We're finally ready to contextualize that, okay? In that conversation, I was making the argument moral anti-realism is what I believe in for this reason or another, and Rem was saying, then how would you even convince people who disagreed with you? If they had different axioms, if they had different first principles, how could you ever change their mind? And I said, you couldn't. You'd have to kill them. And guys, if you could find a human whose axiomatic values were promote human suffering, minimize human happiness, this person would be some kind of insane death cultist. This wouldn't be like a Nazi. Nazis aren't like that. Nazis just have different understandings of how to achieve comparable axiomatic goals. This wouldn't just be a murderer. This wouldn't just be ISIS. Again, ISIS does what it does because it thinks it's the only way to secure the best world. You understand? A person whose axioms differed from us so significantly would be like a cosmetological horror. I don't even know if they could really exist. It would be cartoon evil. They would be a person who delights in misery at a fundamental level. Even cartoon villains often don't do that. Aren't there a ton of cartoon villains who like to cause suffering, but then it turns out that they're just like miserable and they're lashing out because they think it's a way of getting some kind of sick revenge against the world? In that case, that's not a different set of axiomatic values because they're acting out of a twisted sense of justice, a justice meant to ferment human happiness. So you understand, a person whose axioms are that different from my own would be an alien creature. They would be a cosmic being unlike us. And guys, if we encountered a cosmic being that believed the most good it could do would be through promoting human misery, what do you think we'd do to that being? Do you think we'd debate it? How could you debate it? Its axioms are different. It values different things. You'd have to kill it. And that was the point that I was making. Conservatives don't have opposite axioms to me. They usually have the same ones. I was only talking about, I don't think it's a good refutation of moral anti-realism to talk about how difficult it is to talk with people with different axioms, because I think we all have basically the same axioms. Where do you think literal sociopaths that don't feel any human empathy fall? Sociopaths still, I think, have comparable axiomatic values. Oh yeah, the orcs. Wait, yes, the orcs from Warhammer. The orcs from Warhammer are perfect examples. Guys, what do the orcs in Warhammer 40k care about more than anything else? Fighting. That's it. Not fairness, not happiness, not justice, just fighting. They'll fight their friends, they'll fight their brothers, they'll fight anything and everything. That's it. You can't make moral appeals to them as a human. You could say stuff like, hello, orc. Please don't shoot me, I have a family. What the fuck does that matter to it? What? What? What does that even mean to an orc? An orc wants to fight. If it can't fight enemies, it'll fight allies. But they're fictional? Exactly. I'm a moral anti-realist who believes that our axiomatic principles are intersubjective. They're so intersubjective that they encompass basically every human being in existence. Maybe there are some exceptions I don't know of, but I think that pretty much everyone everywhere subscribes to my basic axiomatic values. So the only people who I think would be so far away from that it would be okay to kill them would be people who are that far away. Does that make sense? Intersubjective means that it's subjective, but within a group context, you can arrive at objective answers. So intersubjective, but there are contexts in which they form a practically objective baseline, you know? No. Klingons don't value fighting above anything else. Klingons are a warrior culture in Star Trek, sure, but fundamentally they care about the betterment of their species. Fundamentally, Klingons believe in government and the preservation of certain rights and values and etc., etc. Orcs do not. In 40K, orcs just fight. That's it. That's literally it. It's not a moral thing. They don't do what they do because they think it's right or wrong. One of the funniest stories in 40K is of a great Wa, like a giant army they assembled, that went into the warp and ended up warping through hell for 20 years until they warped back to 20 years ago, encountered themselves in the past, and then the two armies fought each other because the leader of the armies wanted a second copy of his own gun. They went through time in a loop, encountered themselves, and thought, yeah. And that's it. It's violence for violence's sake. Not to make life better, not to promote the species, just violence. And that is a different set of axiomatic values. And what do humans do with orcs in 40K? They kill them. And what do orcs do with humans in 40K? They kill them. And unfortunately, I don't think moral realism fixes that fact. Orcs also disable their Geller fields in the warp to fight demons because fighting is fun. Oh yeah, oh my god. They warp into hell and they get bored on the trip. And they're like, what if we just turn the shields off so demons filter through the ship? And they're like, yeah, sure. Please end this stun lock. I just want people to understand where I'm coming from. You know, I'm not trying to stun lock. It's just a final reminder. I am not a philosophy buff. I'm not an expert on any of this. What I've just described is my understanding of these issues and the reasons I believe what I believe. It's totally possible that one day a philosophy professor will come on and just dissect me. That is not only is that possible, by the way, that is like a totally reasonable thing that might happen, you know? So I'm not like totally attached to any of this. I just take great issue with like Remen perspective philosophy's incorrect characterizations of my belief that betray a serious ignorance on their part. Like that does bother me. Like they know more than I do. So why lie about me? It's possible that it's totally possible that there are holes in what I just said, but they have just utterly failed to address those holes and instead wildly mischaracterized my perspective. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because earlier I saw in the subreddit somebody, and I deleted the post and banned the person because I fucking hate these people. But this person said like, hey, I'm a big fan, but I have some problems with Vaush. Let me see if I can find this. The presumptuousness with which this argument was made, like, sent shivers down my spine. Let me see if I can just... It was criticizing me, and it was like, of course, Vaush doesn't believe in truth, only power. And it's like, Anarcho-queer, I didn't think it was a poor performance. I legitimately just don't upload every conversation that I have. I just don't think it was a poor performance. I mean, I haven't, like, watched the debate again. Maybe it is, but it wasn't done to hide or whatever. And also, it's been over a year. Like, how long are people going to cry about that? Holy shit.